Hello, good evening. Hello. Okay, okay, okay. So I think we can start now. So I hope you can see my screen. Okay, please can you see my screen? Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the introduction to web development. With our previous session, we talked about some of the basic elements and stuff you need to know about web development before you start building websites. But since most of you were not around, I'm going to go all over that today as well, so that in our next meeting you start practicing on them. Okay, so with web development, you have a roadmap, like a pattern you're supposed to follow. You have what we call the front end and then the back end. With the front end, it has to do with what we see on our web browser. So let's say you visit a website like maybe facebook.com, what you see, the interface you can see on your browser is what we call the front end. And then with that, you can build that with HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. And then also you can look at some front-end frameworks if you are okay with the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. With the frameworks, you have like React, Angular, Vue, etc. There are more front-end frameworks, but these are the few popular ones. And also we have back-end development. With the back-end development, it's like a program or a code that runs on a web server to send results to users on our web browser. So let's say when you log into Facebook, you enter your username and then your password. It sends a request to the server, and the server authenticates you to check if the account is really yours, and then it returns data related to the account you logged in. And also with the backend, we have some tools we use. Some use PHP, others use Python. We have Ruby and then Java. And also with the backend framework, we have Laravel, Express, Flask, and then Django. For me, I use Django for web development because it makes coding a bit faster. But it depends on you. You may also be good with PHP. You choose the framework which best suits you. Now let's start with the main thing. That's the HTML5. So HTML is just a hypertext markup language that is used to design websites or web document that will be displayed on our web browser. The HTML describes the structure of the web page. How the element should look on your website is defined by the HTML. And also HTML consists of a series of elements. That's the A tag, D tag. We'll talk about all of them in our later sections. Okay, this is the basic structure of an HTML document. All HTML documents are supposed to have a doc type which tells your browser that you are working with the current version of HTML, which is HTML5. And also you can specify the language you want in the HTML opening tag. And then you have our header tag, which contains metadata, links, the title, and other details you want your website to have. You keep all of that in your header tag. And also you have the body tag, this is where you place the main content which will be displayed on your web browser. So anything outside the body tag is not being displayed on our web browser. Now, so if you take a close look at the tags, you can see that each of them has an opening and then a closing tag. So with HTML, you can see this is the opening tag and then this is the closing tag. You can see a / here, which is the browser that is where that particular tag is ending. And similarly for the body tag, you can see it has an opening and then a closing tag. So basically, this is the structure of an HTML document. This is how every HTML document should look like. Okay, yeah, I've talked about this. The HTML document, this is the opening of the HTML document. It defines the root element of the HTML document. So it means that all HTML documents or all websites are supposed to have an opening tag with the HTML document. If you don't have this, your browser doesn't know that you are running with HTML. So this tells your browser that you are running an HTML document. Okay, the body tag also defines the document body, like as I said earlier on. All the elements that will be shown on your web browser or your web page, you place them in the body tag. Anything outside the body tag is not being displayed on the web browser. And then you also have H1 to H6. That's for defining headings. Okay, so we also have types of URLs. We will talk about this when I get to the practical section. We have absolute URL and then relative URL. With the absolute URL, links to an external image that is hosted on another website. So for instance, when you're including an image in your website, you will have an image in your project directory, or maybe you can copy a link online and then insert it to your website. Or you can also use a relative URL. With a relative URL means that you are having the image in the same folder of the project, so you can just reference it and then apply it to your website. And then with HTML elements, we have block elements and then inline elements. With block elements, it starts from a new line, and the browser automatically adds some space or margin before and after the element. So let's say when you use a div tag, for instance, the element automatically starts from a new line. So these are examples of the block element have HTML, the section, the div, tag, H1 to H6. We also have the form, the footer, and then other elements as well. We also have the inline element. With the inline element, it does not start on the new line, but continue on the next line if there is a space available. So for instance, when you add an A tag, the B tag, I tag, strong tag, or select tag, they continue on the same line. They don't go to the next one unless there is no space for it to display on the web browser profile. Okay, so now we talk about the basic structure and the element and the root to development. Now I want us to try the practical aspect so that when you look at any web browser or any folder, you look how each element works. Hello? Please, can you hear me now? Hello? Okay. So I talked about the basic elements and then the roadmap we need to follow when building a website. But for now, I will dive into the practical aspect so that you really see how all these things I talked about work. So that you can also build websites or anything on the web. Okay, so to start, I'll just create an empty folder for this purpose. So I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop. So you can see this is my desktop. I'll create a new folder and name it my website. And then you can also open it with any text editor you want. For me, I'm going to work with Visual Studio Code. Please, can you all see my VS Code? Okay. So after you create your folder, you just open it with your text editor or any other text editor you want, and then we create a new file. So new file, we name it index.html. Index.html. Okay. So all HTML documents are supposed to have extension .html. So without .html, it's not going to display as an HTML document. So as I said earlier on, all HTML documents are supposed to have an opening and closing HTML tag, which will tell your browser that you are working with HTML. So in VS Code, there's a shortcut you can use to just create a boilerplate of the basic HTML structure. I can use exclamation and then hit enter on my keyboard. It will auto generate the basic structure of the HTML document. So you can see it has a doc type, it has an HTML opening tag and then a closing tag, and then specify the language I want here, English. It also has a heading tag which will contain metadata. With your metadata, it can be the description of your website. You can also add some keywords to it as well, so that when people type in any word corresponding to your website, Google will automatically locate your website and then display it to the user. And then we also have the title tag. The title tag is like the name of your website. So maybe if this is Masters Wachi. Okay, maybe this website for Master. Maybe this Masters Wachi's website. You put that in the title tag, and that is what will be displayed on top of your browser. And then in between this body tag, this is where you place the main content as displayed on your website. Do you have any questions up to where I am now? Hello? Please, do you have any questions or I can move on? Okay, so I talked about some block elements and then inline elements. I also talked about the H1 up to H6 and also the B tag operating paragraphs. We are going to try all this and know how to do it. So for headings, we have from H1 up to H6. They are for defining headings in our website. So we can have something like this, heading 1, it's for H1, and their sizes decrease as the value of the tag increases. So let's say if I have something like H2, the size of H2 is going to be smaller than H1. I can have heading 3. And also have H5. And then heading 6. We have from H1 up to H6. These are for defining headings in our website, so you can choose any of them when you are working on the website. Okay, so as you can see, we have the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and then H6, and their sizes varies as the value of the element increases. So for H1, you can see it's bigger, H2 smaller, and then the size reduces in that order. That's how the heading tag works. And also you can add paragraphs to your website, so you can try the P tag as well. The P tag is for creating paragraphs. So I can just say P and then you write anything at all you want. So maybe you can say this is a paragraph. So this is how you create a paragraph in your website. But for you, you can have maybe descriptions about a particular thing. Maybe if you have a heading saying myself, maybe use H3. You have a heading like myself, something like this. You write maybe a paragraph of 1 or 2 about yourself. You can use the P tag, and then to create the heading, you can just use the H3, H1, H2, H4, depending on what you want, and then how you want it to look on your website. We also have what we call lists. Lists are yeah, for like lists is something like maybe if you want to list your best food, places you visit mostly, what you like, anything at all, you use what we call the list. For list, we have unordered list and then ordered list. To create an unordered list, use the UL tag, which tells your browser that you are working with an unordered list. And then to list the items, you use the LI tag. Maybe let me have a heading here. So H3, see my best food. Can have something like this, H3, my best food. And then maybe I can list the food inside the UL tag. Maybe banku, wachi, jollof. Yeah, I think this is okay. So now if I go back to my browser and then refresh, okay, so if I go back to my browser and refresh, you can see I have the list of items here. With my heading, I choose my best food, and then with the list I choose banku, wachi, jollof rice. Maybe you can have a list of maybe links in your website. If you are building a website, maybe you can have links, maybe home, about, contact, testimonials, anything at all. That's how or when you can use the unordered list in your website. We also have what you call the ordered list. So you can choose between the two, which best suits what you are working with. So for ordered list, we just use the OL tag, and similarly for the unordered, we use the LI tag to list the items in between these tags. So let me have a heading here. Let me use H4 this time around. Let me say ordered list. Say ordered list, and then just copy this. And then you see the difference when I refresh my browser. Okay, so you can notice the difference between the unordered list and then the ordered list. With the unordered list, you can see they are numbered in bullets. They are in bullet, but for the ordered list, they are numbered in. They are numbered. We have 1, 2, 3. You can also change the type to, let's say, Roman numerals. That's the I. Or maybe you want it in alphabetical order. You can choose A, B, and then C in that order. So you can try that as well. So in between this, you can just say type, and then you choose. If you want it in alphabetical order, you just choose the type to be A. If you want it to be in Roman numerals, lowercase, you just use a smaller I. In caps, you see capital I in that order. So let's try for the alphabetical order. Let me refresh. So you can see it has changed to alphabetical order. Now I have A, B, and then C. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about headings, okay, paragraphs, how to create a list. Okay. Now the next thing is to talk about the block element and then the inline element. So with block element, you can see that on our web browser, all these elements started on a new line, but when we have to work with an inline element, it will just continue on the same line unless there's no space for it to show. So for inline element, you have the input tag. Input tag is an inline element. So let me just duplicate this. When I refresh my browser, you can see the changes. So let me refresh. So you can see with an inline element, it just continues on the same line. But for block element, they start on a new line. So for each one, for heading tags, you can see that heading tags are block elements, and then the input tags are inline elements. So as you go along in coding, you are going to come across a lot of elements and then how they work. So at this point, if you have any questions or any clarifications on anything I've said earlier on, you can ask. Please, you have any questions on what I've said earlier? Okay. So you get everything I've said. I also share the slides with you so that you go through. If you don't get anything, you can just draw my attention. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the URLs. I talked about absolute URL and then the relative URLs. So I'm first going to try with an image. So to add an image to your website, you just use the img tag. And the img tag is also an inline element. So between the img tag, you can see you have src. The src is just the source of the image, or where the image is located within your browser or outside your browser. Maybe you are using an external link. You are going to specify that between the src attribute. And then also have the alt attribute. With the alt attribute, you just write something to describe the image you are using in your website. So let me show you how that also works. So let me just search for any image at all. Which image? Let's search for Wachi. The other time I searched for Wachi. So let's use Wachi. Images. Okay. Okay, so you can just copy the address of the image and then insert it in our code. Okay, so you can just paste the link you just copied in between the src attributes. Oh, this link is very long. And then in the alt tag, you just write something to describe the image you have inserted in your website. So in case if the image doesn't load properly, the alt tag is the name that will be displayed to the user. Maybe image of Wachi. So the user will see that, oh, this was an image of Wachi but wasn't able to load properly. So I can just refresh my browser and then you see how it also works. Just a refresh. So now I can see an image of Wachi. So this is how you can insert images in your website. This is an absolute URL because you are taking the source of the image from an image hosted online, which is not inside the directory of your project. You can choose to use absolute URLs in your website, but the issue is that the images you use in your website may be subject to copyright. There are some images which are not free, so you can't use them in your website. So it's mostly advisable to use the relative URL. You download the image and then use it directly in your project. Let me show you how to do that as well. So I'm just going to copy one image and then paste it into my working directory. Images. Okay, let's see. I have some images. Okay, let me just copy this image. My website. So let me just create one folder and then keep the image in it. So let me see images. Okay. So now instead of using the, okay, let me just create another img tag. So now similarly, just like we did for the Wachi, referencing the image from an online hosted image, you can also have the image in our project directory. So you have the image in the images folder. So with the source, I'll just say images. You have to write the folder name you used. So I choose images, then /, then you select the image you inserted. You can also add the auth attribute to describe what the image is about. But for now, I'm going to leave it blank. So I'm just going to refresh my browser so that you see the changes. Okay, so as you can see, both of them works the same, but the only difference is that you are referencing this from an absolute URL, which means an image which is hosted online, but with the relative you have it inside your working directory. So these are the two ways you can add images to your website. Okay, so up to this point, if you have any questions, you can ask, because in our next meeting I'm going to add all that I've talked to build one simple website. We are all going to do that together. Please, do you have any questions, or still I should proceed? Okay, I get it. So since today is just the introduction to the basic HTML structure and then how each element works in our website, the questions will be that much. But in our next meeting, we are going to add all these tags, the H1, the P tag, the IMG tag, to build a very simple website. Okay, I'll also send you a link to download the software I'm using for this class. I'm using Visual Studio Code, so I'll send you a link to download it on the WhatsApp page. And also, if you have any questions, you can also send that to the WhatsApp group page as well. And also, if you are practicing something on your own personally, then you need clarifications on how to go about it, you can also ask that on the WhatsApp page so that others can also benefit from your questions. Okay, I think we will end here. I don't want to add a lot of things to confuse you at the moment. Alright, thank you guys for joining in. Do you think it's favorable for us to meet tomorrow as well? So tomorrow, by the time we meet, you'll all be done with downloading the software for the class. Okay. Have a good evening.